came to whispering pines the same way it always did, birds chirping, cabin doors opening one by one, a symphony of moans and groans. There was no announcement about Jacob. Counselors moved along the paths, checking between buildings and pausing at the edge of the woods longer than usual, but nothing was said out loud. Whatever had happened the night before was being handled quietly. In cabin 6, Jacob's bunk was still empty. Someone mentioned it while pulling on his shirt, wondering out loud if he'd gone home sick. Another camper shrugged and said, maybe his parents came early. No one seemed certain, but no one seemed alarmed either. Daniel sat on his bunk, tying his shoes, listening without looking up. He kept his eyes on the ground in front of him and stayed quiet. He remembered the sound Jacob made when he was pulled away, the way his scream cut off. He understood instinctively that talking about it would only make things worse. Before breakfast, Evan found Mr. Hale near the administration building and brought up Jacob reluctantly, the way you did when you were afraid of what would happen next. Mr. Hale listened without interruption. Then he said Jacob's parents had arrived in the middle of the night because of a family emergency and picked him up themselves. He hadn't felt it was necessary to wake Evan. Evan nodded, but the explanation didn't sit right. Counselors were supposed to sign off when a camper left the grounds, no matter the hour. Evan mentioned it just once, quietly. Hale's expression didn't change. He reminded Evan that administrative matters were not his responsibility to worry about. Evan felt the correction land. He apologized, nodded again, and let it go, adding it to the small but growing list of things about Mr. Hale that didn't sit right. The rest of the morning moved on as if nothing had changed. At the dining hall, campers moved through the line under the steady gaze of the cameras mounted above the doors. By then, the room was quieter than usual. Voices stayed low. Small groups leaned toward each other, whispering theories about Jacob, glancing around as if afraid of being overheard. One kid snorted and said, maybe something took him in the night, then laughed like it was a joke. Daniel felt a sick drop in the pit of his stomach. He kept his eyes down. Halfway down the line, a tray piled with food slipped from someone's hands and crashed to the floor. The sound cut sharply through the room. Daniel let out a sharp cry before he could stop himself. The room stilled for a fraction of a second. A counselor glanced over. Daniel froze, then forced his shoulders to relax. Above the doorway, a small camera dome hummed quietly, its lens angled down toward the line. Rest hour came in the early afternoon. Cabin 6 settled into a low, distracted noise. Cards on a bunk, a board game on the floor, a few campers talking while others lay back and did nothing at all. Daniel sat on his bunk and tried to focus, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the boy in the woods, then to the thing that had taken Jacob. He couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. The idea wouldn't let go. When no one was paying attention, he slipped out the door to find out. He didn't see the camera mounted near the cabin path tilt as he passed beneath it. The woods swallowed the sound of camp almost immediately. The further Daniel walked, the quieter it got, until the only noises left were his own footsteps and the occasional rustle of leaves. Then the forest went quiet. The sudden wrong kind of silence that settled in when a predator was nearby. He had just stepped slightly off the path when the world slammed sideways. Something hit him hard from the left, knocking the air out of his lungs as they crashed into the brush together. Pain flared where branches scraped his arms and face. Panic surged up his throat. A hand clamped over his mouth. It wasn't shaking, it wasn't frantic. It was firm and deliberate, holding him still. Daniel's eyes flew open. Dirt and leaves filled his vision. Then the boy's face came into focus inches from his own. Pale skin, dark hair hanging forward. Older than Daniel. The same boy he had seen watching from the trees before. The boy shook his head once. Slow. A warning. Footsteps sounded on the path. They were heavy, unhurried. Whatever was coming wasn't looking for anything. It was moving with purpose, as if it had been sent. Daniel felt the vibration through the ground more than he heard it. Each step sent a dull thump through his chest. He wanted to scream. He wanted to run. The hand over his mouth tightened just enough to remind him not to. The creature moved past them on all fours, low and deliberate. It wasn't much taller than Daniel, but it was broader, its frame thick with muscle that shifted under dark, ridged skin. Short, jagged spines ran along its back, rising and falling as it moved. Its head stayed forward and low, neck stretched out, mouth open just enough to show uneven teeth. It didn't stop. It didn't slow. It moved straight ahead like it knew exactly where it was going. When the sound faded, the boy didn't move right away. He waited, listening completely still. Finally, he lifted his hand. "They hear better than they see," he whispered. Daniel nodded quickly, his heart hammering. "I was just..." The boy shook his head again, cutting him off. "Don't talk." He glanced back toward the path, then at Daniel. "There's a lot you don't know about this place." Daniel swallowed. "What was that?" The boy didn't answer. He was listening again. "Daniel?" Evan's voice carried through the trees. Daniel turned, relief and fear twisting together. "I'm here." When he looked back, the boy was gone, leaving behind only flattened brush where they'd been moments before. Evan emerged from the trees and took in Daniel's scraped arms and dirt-streaked clothes. Daniel told him he'd gone for a walk and tripped. Evan didn't press. He told him to stay close to camp, that things were unsettled today, and guided him back toward the cabins. That evening, camp lights came on, one by one, as dinner ended and night activities began. Laughter drifted across the grounds. From a distance, everything looked normal. Daniel sat apart from the others, watching shadows stretch and listening to the crackling of a campfire. He kept his mouth shut. Below the camp, Jacob sat at a table while a technician slid cards in front of him. Shapes, patterns. Jacob touched the correct ones almost immediately, faster than expected, faster the second time. Mr. Hale watched through the glass without expression. Later, a woman handed Hale a tablet. He pressed play and watched grainy footage of a trail camera. Daniel walking, a blur bursting from the tree line. Two figures disappearing into the brush just seconds before the dispatched creature passed by. "We thought he was gone," Hale said quietly. "Apparently not," the woman replied, unimpressed. "He knows too much." "This needs to be handled delicately," she said. "He's the only one who survived Phase 3. He's too important to lose." "It's under control," Hale said. The woman glared at him. "It better be." She turned and walked away. Above ground, whispering pines slept. The woods did not. Day 3 was complete.